Often when YouTubers become popular, they want to do more to fill the creative itch. Either trying out new things in videos, new channels entirely, or even something more risky, such as a Kickstarter. Today's subject, The Odd Ones Out, did all of that, yet the latter is the most interesting. Now I've made a few videos about his books and games to see what we can learn from them, and after his newest project, Cafe Chaos, released into the public, I think I'm seeing a destructive pattern that can be explored. Hello, I'm Daftpina, and this is Cafe Chaos, Shameful Reskin. But before we get into the Kickstarter, we need to briefly run down who The Odd Ones Out is for the people in the audience who don't know who he is, so we gotta do that for them first. Robert James Rowson is the son of an author and a 25-year-old animator on YouTube. He got his start posting comics on Tumblr at a very young age under the Odd Ones Out moniker, and later created animations on his channel way back in 2014. Getting fame from his relatable life stories, he reached over 16 million subscribers, and his time at Subway captivated young audiences' minds and wallets. And along with hiring more and more people to work on his videos, he also expanded into merchandise. Unlike contemporary animators who are seldom with what they put their face on, James likes to put his on, I guess anything he can get his hands on. You can buy things such as shirts, pajamas, backpacks, sweaters, sweatshirts, hats, plushies, pins, posters, headphones, which with my experience with YouTuber merch, they're usually just reskins of brands you never heard of, bookmarks, audio cards, which for the website has my favoriteest lowest quality JPEG, and a description that just says tea, lanyards, face masks, keychains, socks, mugs, costumes, which I bought and never wore in a video because the zipper is very small, pop sockets, and even playing cards. And actually we have some of the merch to show you, which I'll tell you why I have later, and it's pretty high quality stuff. Paul, his merch guy, did a good job of quality control on the main merch. But I'm not sure how much the materials recycled, because on the little tag right here it says all new materials, but that's neither here or there. But besides standard merchandise, James also wanted to expand into more unique ways of money making, such as releasing 2 books, 2 songs, a mobile game, and even some board games. So I suppose it's time to look into how funding went, because unlike the previous one, this has a lot more under it. It makes me worry about the game. So let's go look at a website. Nearly 2 years after his first campaign, the game's been on store shelves and has slowly been discounted in price. So James needed something new. And 2 years later, on August 8th, 2020, he announced his Kickstarter within a video about COVID-19 quarantine. And so I decided to back the project because there was no way it wouldn't get funded. Why do I say that? Because they reached their goal in 7 minutes. Of course, there's the other fact that the previous project also got funded fairly quickly, so any worry dissipated pretty fast. The Cafe Chaos Kickstarter video shows a nice animation and blurbs about a brand new game developed within the year 2020 during quarantine.
Check out my newest game on Kickstarter. Over the last year, I've been developing a new game called Cafe Chaos.
A multiplayer food-based fighting game made by 8 people. Yet 2 are credited as animators, so that must be for the video? I'm not sure how you can put an animation in a board game? Also, for future reference, keep in mind this guy Peter Vaughn, as we'll get into him later. After a little over a month, the project ended on September 10, 2020, reaching 9,690 backers, pledging $894,449 to the project. But although it got funded, the hardest part of any Kickstarter is actually sending out the product. Oddly enough, James decided to release a board game that requires multiple people during a global pandemic. You know when social distancing is preferred? As well as businesses being slower and shipping taking a bit longer because of things having to clear customs. Now I have to wait like 2 days instead of 1 day shipping on Amazon. Needless to say, there were major delays within the game. One such being the Chinese factory that manufactured the game had an outbreak of COVID. Originally, delivery estimates were set for December 2020, but the orders started to send out in May of 2021. Thus missing out the Christmas deadline, which disappointed a lot of parents and kids. Check in the comments to see how others are doing. There's a person complaining about the shipping delays, and another person saying they received 2 of every item. Does that mean someone didn't get their products? Which is now a good time to talk about the Kickstarter tiers and see what you get. First, let's start with Can't Catch Harry to compare and contrast. We had the full game, the expansion, some holo cards, and lastly, custom card. Not too bad per tier, and really not much excess that was not part of the game. Well, for the Cafe Chaos Kickstarter, there's so much bloat that I feel like I need a Pepto-Bismol. Oops, that's the wrong footage, that's just spare. Meow. For Cafe Chaos, the tiers and options are designed to squeeze as much money out of the consumer as possible, making you feel as if you need to get all the items, or else you'd miss out. Forever. You have the base game plus an expansion and poster, then all the expansions, poster, and lunchbox for 80 USD. But what if I don't want the lunchbox or poster? Now, besides making James and his warehouse sad for not paying for it, if you choose the lowest tier at 25 USD, as well as buying the expansions individually, that's a total of 90 USD, which is $10 more than the tier of stuff you don't want. Doesn't make sense. I suppose choosing the $80 tier is all I'd recommend, because it comes with the full game, expansions, and every other tier is just a lot. Like, a lot of extra stuff. For the 130 USD tier, you can get 3 mystery plushes and, wait a second, game mats, which let me tell you don't actually fit in the game, so if you want to get them, just gonna have to sit on your shelf. The 250 USD tier gets you all the plushies, backpack, lunchbox, signed lanyard, and a lot of other things. The 350 USD tier, why does a tier that high exist? Gets you a signed bento box edition and everything else mentioned prior. But say you want the original edition, expansions, and bento version, trying your best not to pay for extra stuff. Well, that would be 225 USD in total, since they claim it comes with the expansions. And the main issue I have with the tiers is it becomes less about the actual game, and it feels like they bought a lot of stock of things and said, where can we put this? Oh, the Kickstarter. And if $500 was enough for you to spend on the Odd Ones Out merch, why is a tier that high exist? Luckily, you can buy some $80 headphones. Of course, this is noting that these tiers aren't required to play the full game with expansions, as the $80 USD is all you need. Which is why I like Tom Scott's Muffin Time Kickstarter, as the fear of losing out is mitigated because of the more affordable price, which let me tell you is quite a heavy game for the size. Of course, this is remembering that the expansions are quite expensive. The animator pack is possibly more costly than the rest, because James had to license the IP of others, but that just leads into another issue. The description claimed the booster packs are Kickstarter exclusive.
Some of these deals will only be available for the 30-day campaign, so be sure to check them out before they disappear forever.
Meaning this is the only guaranteed chance to get these booster pack cards. There is a chance they can be sold at retail later, but the animator pack most likely won't be, unless James is able to secure contracts with the animators, compensating them for their IPs. Not to mention how it would go to sell these card packs at minimum 15 USD, because Muffin Time gave us boxes for the cards, in case we don't want to mix them in. But unlike the last game James made, at least the expansion packs actually fit in the box for easy storage. Overall, the additional unneeded items are a good way to pimp out the brand for extra sales, and I cannot deny how well they did that. Yet it was done at the expense of making the tiers more expensive, with me preferring that the earlier tiers focus more on the game, and not say throwing in a lunchbox. Sure, these mystery plushes are related to the game, but do I really need to pay for those and a lunchbox when all I want to get is the game mats? Luckily, the game mats are sold separately for $20. Quite an expensive game, you might say, and I hope that the costs are able to get people their games in a timely manner, either for expedited shipping costs, or at the very least giving those who paid for a golden figure a tracking number. With less than 10,000 people supporting the project, it's a lot more than last time, yet still a finite number that needs to be handled properly. And it's imperative that James has to deliver. Only these select few were willing to pay directly up front for the game, and last time he made a Kickstarter, there were major delays as well, and in fact store shelves actually got the products before many of the backers did. But wait a second, this person's from the new game. Looking at one last comment, this person perfectly summarizes the Kickstarter campaign, citing how the most dedicated of fans feel burned, and new fans possibly getting turned off based on how this was handled. Speaking of, I suppose it's time to actually talk about the game itself. I mean, it really feels like we're building up to something here. You want to start a food fight? Me, personally, not really. This is like a limited edition shirt, so I'll just hide in the corner, watch from a distance. But before we go in depth about the board game, I know a lot of people watching this video want to start their own YouTube channel. Luckily, with today's sponsor, we have an easy to use yet powerful editing software called Filmora 10 from Wondershare. Unlike other complicated programs, Filmora is a great option for beginners trying to learn their craft. With tons of preset templates like text, filters, overlays, and animated skins. Having these available to you makes, well, making content a lot easier. To show a quick tutorial, I'll drag a clip into the editing track and see what options I have. You can trim, crop the video, adjust the audio levels, and even optimize color for your needs. And to show how easy it is to use the program, let's do some green screening, which I do in every video. Oh, look at that. That wasn't that hard. But if that's not enough, which as is, that's a lot. You can go online to the film stock library and download anything you'd like. And with over 10 million assets, that's quite a lot to work with. Filmora 10 is easy to try, but keep in mind that the trial has a watermark. So if you want the full copy, you gotta commenting, I want to try Filmora to make animations, or anything else you want to make, and share on Twitter/Instagram, #Daftpina and Filmora, because it makes it easier for me to find it. And with that, I'll pick 3 lucky winners to get the full version of Filmora 10. But that's enough about Filmora 10, as I gotta get back to my set. That I mean finding out where my chair is and moving this table? Did you put it here?
So I'm making another card game and going to make it bigger and better than the first one.
Wow. Well, hey, look, we're more than happy to announce that. If you don't mind me saying that, we'll keep this in and we'll let you.
No, I need to announce it in June.
I was very disappointed with the last board game James created. Can't get cherry. Oh. Is it raining? As it was a reskin of a pre-existing game disguised as a new one. Not only that, but the overall game felt cheap, whether it be from the hard to shuffle cards, the badly painted figures, or just the overall graphic design. Yet in saying that, a lot has changed between the old and the new one, starting with the box. First off, the more colorful rendition of the front makes the box feel more dynamic. I mean, the last one was just a bunch of people playing a game. Not only that, but the text stating an Odd Ones Out game is less prominent, and it feels more place in the text compared to the last game. A big concern I had was how much the game relied on James's star power in order to sell it. That's why in my Muffin Time video I compared the two, as the latter doesn't require knowledge of the source material to have fun with the game, setting itself apart as something the fans can appreciate, and not just the fans are able to appreciate. To keep the game closed, there's a nice magnet cover, which is pretty fun to open and shut. The backs of the games are night and day, yet we have some foreshadowing events telling us this is still a YouTuber game. Join James in the ultimate Odd Ones Out fight. And you might ask,
what's an Odd Ones Out fight?
And I'd say, I don't know. Next, let's see some of the characters that'll be in the game. Cannonball James and Fnatic stick out, with the latter feeling a bit pompous.
Look at this fan buying all of my merch. Do you want to play the fan obsessed with me? That's fun, right?
Oof, that Odd Ones Out AI voice someone made is pretty rough, but that won't stop me from using it later. Again, 30-minute average game time, ages 9+, 3-day players, we have a product made by Breaking Games, and something called Squirmy? Keep that company in mind for later. Inside the box, we have a big rulebook, 8 playmats, a figure, which is painted decently enough, a bag of splat tokens, character, combo cards, target, event cards, character, action cards, and lastly, food topping, condition cards. As for the rules, they specifically state that you're joining James and his friends to play this wacky game. When someone reaches 10 splat points, the game is over, and whoever has the lowest splat points wins. Other things to note within the rules, the inclusion of the booster packs within the base game, with them stating how their Kickstarter exclusives. In the retail release, we most likely won't see these, unless they, just sell them later. Lastly, we have the people who worked on the game, with 2 new people added to the bottom. The next section we'll get into are the actual characters of the base game. 10 characters to start with, and you probably already noticed them behind me, 10 characters, but not the 10 characters of the game. We have James, Baby James, Furry, Floof, Paul the Bully, Emo Friend, Daring Devil, Mad Scientist, and Fnatic. Interesting enough, 3 of the characters in the base game are just James. Noting, of course, the Furry is referenced in the video as himself, with his story about conventions. Paul the Bully is his product manager, and real-life former bully. Emo Friend is actually Dave from Boy in a Band, without, of course, all the licensing required for James needing to confirm it's actually him, and not some random person that happens to look like the guy in the music video. It's just a coincidence. Daring Devil and Mad Scientist are some new characters for the game, yet looking at the all-star casts, I can't help but think that this game can't decide how much it wants to be about the Odd Ones Out. Although Can't Catch Harry sprouted from the Odd Ones Out's brand, it was a new IP. And it would have been great if it cemented itself as something entirely different, yet something for the fans, much like Muffin Time. But with James's insistence to have himself quite literally front and center, I can't help but see this as another YouTuber game. One that is only consumed because of the name, rather than the quality. you have to sell to the general public in order to expand into a bigger market. However, in saying that, I think the expansion packs do a good job at somewhat satisfying the audience with his name, which is what I call fan service. Subway, royalty, junk food, and animator pack being the service he's giving to his fans. The latter being animators he knows, which is nice for them, as this could be the only way they get an opportunity to be in a board game. But in the event they're sold in stores, I hope they get good contracts. But regardless, the thought of seeing, say, something else YT under the branding of the Odd Ones Out would be kind of weird. Would you be akin to Marvel seeing Sony's Spider-Man, the Odd Ones Out's something else YT? And that brings in the idea that the characters shown throughout the game are essentially pimping out your friends for merch, as most of the characters are real people he actually knows that he put in the game, like Paul the Bully. While I say friends loosely, as in my last video about the Odd Ones Out, I brought up his potential fallout with Adam, which he responded with in a big comment, getting very defensive on the matter of Adam.
Yo, is your friend okay? They're posting some weird ass stuff on Twitter.
I don't like the word friend. Whether we are or not is no one's business. Even though we both have careers in telling stories about our lives, you don't need to be filled in on every chapter. Adam and I are two individuals with our own lives, both online and offline. Any suggestion of what we were doing with each other is entirely speculative and honestly creepy. But if you like his image, he's in my card game you can buy exclusively at my Kickstarter.
Okay, but what about him?
He already signed my contract. He's got this.
Hyperbolic animation aside, the use of actual people as playable characters creeps into the uncanny valley, especially when those involved aren't on good terms anymore. The brand taking forefront more than anything, giving the audience what they want at the expense of the private lives of these public figures. A scary internal fear you cannot voice online, much like a random fan making an AI of your voice.
I'm not real.
But moving back into the game, looking closer at all the playable characters, I did notice something that needed to be addressed. When appealing to a wider audience, you must make sure that the characters you include do not offend, and try your best to include as many different people as possible in order to sell to a broader market. And so if in the base game, there are 3 non-human characters and 7 white male characters. Well, 3 of course being James, which is a requirement. But I guess that ties back into how much the game needs to be about James. But a counter argument I do hear you type in the comment section is,
I thought all his characters were supposed to be weird blobs or whatever. Why does this matter?
First off, thanks for voicing in the video, Ishmael. He was the main character in my cartoon.
Am I in another Odd Ones Out video? Why do you keep making these?
Because he keeps making shit.
Well, not all of them are white blobs, as in his more recent videos after James hired a team, well, they aren't anymore. When creating an art style, the more abstract and less human the characters are, the more relatable they are, because you can see yourself in the idea. SpongeBob is a show that revolves around a sponge, squid, crab, starfish, and squirrel, which has unified a lot of the internet as it's easy for anyone in the world to see themselves or others in these characters. Thus, when James created his white blob characters, introducing non-white ones, you start to see where they aren't.
What about the booster packs you didn't really talk about? Those must include some playable characters.
Of course, starting with the junk food pack, we have 2 new white male characters. A specified man and a small child without a shirt on.
Well, what about the royal pack?
Ah, you're in luck. We have like 8 new characters.
Oh, that's great. How many of them are not white blobs?
None. In fact, one of them is James, so that's like 4 James characters now. Luckily, this pack brings women in the game, so it's nice he remembered them.
Well, it looks like we got 2 more packs. How about the Subway one?
For the Subway pack, well, another James, and look, our first black character.
Well, that's great. I can't believe it took this long.
And last. So I hope you like being the snitch.
I mean, I'd prefer to be a knight or something, but at least it's based on a real person. So being a snitch is just who that person was.
Actually, the person was introduced in a video about conspiracy theories and heavily emphasized that his coworker loved them.
Since I was contractually obligated to stay, I would just listen to him ramble about how he thought the universe worked. He told me about chakras and how easy it was to open your third eye through LSD.
Wait, why did James make a card based on someone that actually existed and just remove the one trait about them that they're known for? That's actually kind of awful.
I actually have a reason. We'll get into later.
Can we just open the last pack already?
Sure. Let's open the animator pack. With 9 new characters based on real people that James knows, we actually do get some representation.
Wait a second. Didn't you say that fuck! Wait a second, didn't you say the booster packs are all just Kickstarter exclusives and that they won't be sold in stores?
You're right. So for playable characters, what do we have?
no women and minorities.
Something that was overlooked and James approved, and ties back into my last direct video about James. He had a falling out with a former friend in which he was heavily racist towards them. So they made a public post in 2019 that you can read more on your own time. They heavily encourage others to share the story so it can actually be seen. Back in 2019, James saw the post, and the former friend showed the apology, citing it as non-sincere, specifically stating his age, and that he only draws white characters, because to him, they're more relatable. Also stating James was vague about how he feels. I made a video with the help of a friend to tackle these issues, as no one prior made a video on this public situation. After watching the video, James left a big comment we'll get into more later, yet the ending specifies the friend being severely vague about his racism towards the former friend, and he specifically tried to twist the story by claiming it's a private matter that was handled, which if you've seen the public post that you encourage people to show when the apology not being accepted wasn't handled, and seeing how the game turned out, I'm not sure much is actually being done. And although he left a public comment on my video, he also tried convincing me to delete it. This is keeping in mind, shortly after my video released, he deleted his entire Tumblr page that he started a long time ago, thus causing the links that once worked on the former friend's posts not work anymore. So if not for this video and the last one, would you have known these things happened?
Hey, whatever happened with the former friend after you made the video?
Oh, she threatened to sue me after a lot of people were attacking her for being racist.
Oh my.
As another update while I was editing this video, Cafe Chaos had a Kickstarter update saying that the expansions that were once Kickstarter exclusive will now be sold on his website. How do you feel about that?
Wait, was that his plan the entire time? Like, why didn't he do like an early bird thing or whatever?
Forgetting the fact that he advertises as Kickstarter exclusive. Well, if this is the early bird special, I guess I'll look forward to the prices on the website.
Yo, I can't wait to unlock the women and minorities for like $90.
But further expanding on the whole thing, I spoke with artist YouTuber Thuman, as they've spoken about subjects like this before.
Let's say a kid from a mixed family or from a different background and they didn't see representation in this game for themselves, I'm sure that they would, feel some type of way because they don't feel necessarily included. But one thing I've noticed with James's characters is the fact that they're all not necessarily human. It's like an emoji with a body. So technically speaking, you could, see yourself in that because he's not necessarily a human. However, since he's already established that he can differentiate different races, he could have easily put that black character in any other role, especially since he didn't have any ties to really being a snitch in his story times. How I understood it, he was more of a conspiracy theorist and just a weird dude overall, rather than specifically a snitch. But he chose to put it in the snitch role, and he doesn't have any other representation of black people in this game. It's one of those things that you really don't know why. Because for me, what I find hilarious is that there's more like bugs and animals in the game than there is like different ethnicities, which is a little bit funny, but at the same time, it's like, it is what it is.
I suppose it's now time to talk about the elephant in the room. Peter Vaughn and Squirmy Beast. Two things I mentioned heavily earlier, both of which are something James most likely doesn't want people to know about. That's because Cafe Chaos was never his original idea, nor was it ever just his product. Could you imagine paying over $500 investing in someone's new idea, only to find out it's not even theirs? In 2013, Peter Vaughn made a Kickstarter for his game idea, What the Food. It was successfully funded and even garnered several expansions, one of which I have with me today, Special Edition, along with the base game. It was even signed by Peter. Lucky fine. To play, you have 3-day players, 30 minutes on average, suitable for ages 8+, you have character, action, targeting, food, and topping cards as well. When any player has 10 or more humiliation points at the end of a round, the game ends. The winner is the player with the lowest humiliation score. Wait a second, it's the same game. This is just Cafe Chaos. He copied the whole style, word for word, line for line. The style of the action cards, the names of the food, and even targeting cards themselves. That's what I meant. As well as the use of tokens in the new game called Splat Points, and even the use of a figure to show whose turn it is. Which is a pretty funny metaphor that James is holding a burger akin to the comic called This Is Mine. I mean, didn't you notice the whole time this game that was always there, looming behind this? In fact, looking at the base game of Cafe Chaos, I was able to match up 8 of the character cards with mostly recycled wording and characteristics from the previous one. I'm sure I'd be able to match the leftover 2 with one of the 4 packs I wasn't able to get, but c'est la vie. And looking at the card specifically, you start to see how much of it is literally a reskin and what's just new, like a checklist of items to be completed. If the previous game had a smart character, a mascot character, and a bully character, well, I must meet them too. And even looking towards the expansion, both characters from the Subway pack are accounted for. Is that the snitch card? Was James so lazy to not convert the card to conspiracy that he just developed a brand new personality for this character that's based on a real person? And on a smaller note, while looking at the cards, I noticed something that was unlike the others. Lady in Waiting has a mismatched action. Not sure which one was from the original game, but they forgot to fully convert it. And rather than actually playing the game at this point, it's actually more interesting to match up the cards or rip straight from the last game to see what actually stayed the same, with specific details such as lime yogurt, boysenberry jam, and beef wiener on the food side, nice old lunch lady, sprinklers, and school nurse having the exact same name and character actions. Catch, lob, hide, smash, sprint, and cheat for basic actions, throw, duck, and grab as the standard ones. And of course the targeting condiments and specific use of the tokens themselves. So like when it came to James deciding what race and gender the character should be, what changes is emphasized as what stayed the same, such as adding slightly more target cards, changing slight wording in food such as extra mac and cheese, and lastly, even event cards. Mix up, being the same card as brown bag but more descriptive, and the janitor replaced with janitor duty with a bit more added description. Noting of course the school nurse, which James pointing at and said, what if she was white?
I can't even call this lazy, to be honest, because he went out of his way to draw 2 characters when he could have easily just drawn like a black woman as a nurse. And one thing I also noticed is that the mix-up and the nice or lunch lady card, they both have, again, blonde white woman in there. He could have easily had any other, race portrayed there, but it's, he chose not to. I guess all the blonde white women are getting represented. So good for them.
But going back to the broader topic of false advertising, there's nothing wrong with reskinning games, but you have to market that to the consumer properly. There are many reimaginings of Monopoly, such as Rick and Morty Monopoly, yet you know what you're getting into when you're buying it. Nowhere in the advertising for Cafe Chaos was it mentioned as a reskin, emphasizing it as a new game from James.
Check out my newest game on Kickstarter. Over the last year, I've been developing a new game called Cafe Chaos. As you've probably heard, I'm releasing a card game on Kickstarter today, so be sure to check that out.
This isn't some bit. I actually made a card game and I worked really hard on it, so...
One can argue you can clearly see Peter Vaughn as game designer. Without doing research, it just looked like he got some help. This would be like if there was a new Rick and Morty game, instead of something original, you're presented with a Monopoly clone. The issue of reskinning would be different in terms of originality if, say, What the Food instead was a game about the Mafia, or aliens I guess, it's still having the same core gameplay. So in those cases, if James converted the game into something about food fighting, it would have taken at least a lot more effort to make something more original. But that's not the case, as James opted to make a food fighting game into another food fighting game with his face on it. The game is essentially a vanity piece for James, forgetting of course the literal gold figure of himself that you can buy, but the foundation of him wanting an idea without putting much effort into it is there from the ground up. And touching upon the Kickstarter again, knowing what we know now, James was trying to gouge his fans of extraordinarily high prices in order to get them to essentially replay a game that was advertised as a fully original one. Keeping in mind that this is not the fault of Peter Vaughn, although he is compensated for his IP being used, it's up to James to make the game worthwhile and not a retread of things that happened before, especially when you advertise it in this way. Which leads into issues I keep seeing in regards to his ventures outside of YouTube, so let's look into why everything he's made is not quite his fault, seeing future excuses for the game.
Okay, he's so happy when he's younger, but then he gets to 24 and he's so unhappy. Why's that? We better figure it out.
When I mentioned the full list of products with James's face on them, they honestly felt like checkboxes he wanted to acquire, and with the mobile game, you start to see some of these excuses crop up, much like me cropping up in front of a green screen, but you can't see the green part. You must remember that he made a video about scams, citing mobile games that encourage kids to purchase expensive fake items that are scummy, and just awful.
And you don't even have to enter in your credit card information, so it's easier for kids just to hit the purchase 6,000 gems button. It's targeting kids and I don't like it. Scam.
So when he does it, how does he justify his actions? In his comment under my video, he states his main source of income is YouTube revenue and not merch. Further going into detail that his main goal with merch is to branch out, trying new things and making products that are not cash grabs, citing that sometimes things fall out of our hands due to behind the scenes contracts and negotiations. But since as he just said that he makes most of his money from YouTube, it can be theorized that merchandise is not a pressing or immediate worry because it's not the main source of income. James owns an actual business under Odd Ones Out Distribution LLC, so one can assume he has power within his own company, or at the very least, the resources to read the contracts. And if merchandise isn't the main source of income, then it can be inferred that more time should have been taken for the products he produces, especially when his reputation is on the line. He even states that the app isn't perfect, pleading to the developer that there are too many ads. But due to those pesky contracts that he himself signed, the developers released the game rather than 2021 where he wanted. He then misdirects the anger, stating that he understands that making a mobile game goes against his previous content, which isn't the case at all. Making a mobile game is fine, but the gouging of fans for money is the main issue. He continues on that he's trying to make the game as good as possible, which is akin to his Can't Catch Harry game, which felt rushed to production, needing a major overhaul in rules after the fact, stating that the projects he directs requires multiple teams of people, and for some of his employees, he's their main source of income, yet they are hired on projects that he decides need to exist, meaning if there isn't a mobile game, there is no team. If there is no board game, there is no team. If there isn't a warehouse holding 50 plus products of his face on it, there is no team. Yet in saying that, the only requirements for a consistent team for his company are for his YouTube videos, and his new one reaching over 15 people working on it at a time. And on the notes of multiple people working on an idea together, in my last video I talked about how he took down his map, possibly because he unfriended one of the animators. He retorted that he actually took it down because the word map doesn't also just mean multi-animator project, something completely awful. So in deleting it, his hands were tied, and sorry animators who worked on it, but better luck next time. Here's another way of looking at it. YouTube animator Something Else YT also had the same issue, yet quite literally just re-uploaded the video, leaving a comment on why he did so. To be frank with the audience and honest about why something happened, allows the hardworking animators' work to be shown and appreciated to a wider audience. So when I see certain comparisons to what James is doing, I do wonder about the choices he makes, especially if it's board game. With Cafe Chaos being the newest example of something thought to be new and exciting, honestly just felt underwhelming and cheap. To hold yourself to a standard strengthens your media empire, and learning to accept criticism improves in the long run. And the immense pressure stemming from the fact that he's the most subscribed storytime animator on YouTube. And even for say my products, such as the cartoon I recently released, reading the comments to see what people liked and what people disliked would just make the next one a lot better. And with my cartoon, I advertise it specifically as what it is, as lying to your audience about what you're promoting or making is cheating them. So when James advertises Cafe Chaos as a brand new game and never hints it as a reskin in advertising, it's disappointing when found out. Going further, merchandising yourself is awkward enough, let alone your friends and coworkers. In fact, you can quite literally buy a plush of a guy James used to work with, or even just play him as a playable character in something he probably doesn't know exists. So when James had to develop 22 characters for his card game excluding the animators, is it any wonder why 5 of them are literally just James? Having these real and fake people meshed together is uncanny, and it shows the restraints of the Odd Ones Out's brand. Chipflake, a fellow animator who hasn't made a storytime since 2019, felt more creative freedom being inspired by real life, rather than the feeling of needing to rely on real life. And this isn't to say James doesn't have original ideas, as I've seen them before. When you have fictionalized characters you give life into, it makes developing games and stories a lot easier as you mold their story. You can do whatever you want with them, without worrying about the morality of it.
How can I make my mom into a marketable plush?
And I'd say it's about time to develop a new IP. As if Cafe Chaos wasn't the largest warning sign you can have about the limits of relatable stories, I'm not sure what else there is. James says that he has upcoming news on another project that he's excited to tell us about. yet my hopes aren't high for whatever that turns out to be. If it's anything like the other ones I've previously seen, then all I can expect is someone else's idea, repackaged under the Odd Ones Out's umbrella, with any and all mistakes being someone else's fault, a misunderstanding, or just something that needs to be fixed after everyone bought the first version. But I could be wrong.
But it is important to discuss these things so that he himself knows that what he's doing is an issue and that he can do better going forward. If you don't know what you've done wrong or what the problem is, how can you improve from that? So that's why I think it's important to have videos like this that bring these situations to the forefront so that they can be addressed and hopefully implement that into his endeavors going forward.
With what you gathered from the video, would you say I'm happy to have backed the Kickstarter project? Definitely not, as when I first saw it, I thought it'd be something new. But since all it turned out to be was a reskin, I feel cheated. Or for a better term, ripped off. And I only feel this way because the advertisements never really mentioned that aspect. Yet in saying that, would his audience have bought the game if it was promoted as a reskin? I mean, probably, people buy Rick and Morty Monopoly. And whether it be from the lack of awareness / regard selling to a broader market, the lackluster changes from the original game, and especially the non-obligation for making this product, I feel like this could have been a lot better if more time was taken to make it something new. But all I can say now is that I need a place for all this garbage. I could give it to Goodwill, or maybe hold on to it for collector's value and sell it to eBay later, but since it's heavily tied to a YouTuber, who knows how much of it can actually hold its value. But what I do know is how to thank the people for watching this video. Thank you. You can follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, and even support me on Patreon, like these lovely people you can see on screen. With a special thank you to Quinn Curio for helping on the script, Ishmael and Thuman having an extra look over it. Until next time, please, don't forget to have fun.